Welcome back to the channel, guys. Welcome back to Phoenix, Arizona. And welcome to another video. Today's episode is going to be a sweet one, guys. We are going to be installing ISR coilovers, well, ISR Pro coilovers on the car. We're going to be doing some ISR camber arms and some ISR rear bucket delete toe arms as well. We also have ISR's eccentric bolt kit, which I have no clue what it does or even how to install it yet, but we'll figure it out in the install portion of this video. The reason I am installing these coilovers is, well, currently we've got a little bit of gap between the fender and the tire. I actually have decent sized hands, and there's about 4 fingers worth of gap in the rear. I don't even know how much in the front, but there's so much gap there that you guys have commented. A couple guys in Arizona have said things to me. The guy who sold me my wheels says I got to take care of that. So that is exactly what these are going to do. First things first, I always like to let you guys know how I got these, what I paid for them. The reason I do that, I've said in other videos, is a lot of guys on YouTube are getting their parts for free. So if they do a review portion of the video, odds are it's a bit tainted. No money exchanged hands here. I actually bought these off. Everything was bought off Injuku Racing's eBay store except for the eccentric bolt kit, aka rear camber toe lockout kit. That was a separate store, but basically I just put offers in under asking price until they accepted it. So I saved, you know, a couple bucks here and there. I'll put a little screenshot up here of how much everything cost me. But by doing that, I basically saved all my shipping costs, and then eBay doesn't have taxes. So, you know, word to the wise, don't forget about the eBay buy it now prices or the make offer feature, because you can actually save, you know, a decent amount of change by using that as opposed to going directly to the store. Some of you might be asking, why did you go with the ISR coilovers? And number one reason is, guess what, guys? For the value of them, I think. Obviously, I haven't driven them yet, but after purchasing and using the ISR catback, their Y-pipe, and their high-flow cats, I don't know how you beat the ISR products for the 350Z. They seem to be quality components. I don't have any complaints about anything ISR in my car right now, and then their prices are better than just about everyone's. So getting into the coilover itself, basically I'm not gonna mess with the lock rings up here up top. I assume ISR, you know, maybe set that from the factory. If it sucks when I get them on the car, we can adjust it later, but I'm not gonna adjust that. Obviously tons of adjustability down here. Lefty loosey is gonna raise the height of the car, righty tighty's going to lower it. You got the section here for your brake lines and everything, and then the lock. I don't know if they call this a lock nut or a lock washer, but that's gonna lock everything in place once you have the settings that you want. Now up top, this is a 32-way dampening system. So left will make it soft, right will make it hard. But anyways, so 32 click system. Listen for the click. One sweet thing I noticed right away is the hardware for up top. They give you brand new nuts, which is pretty cool. I think that is about it for the front. Let me show you the back. Now moving on to the coilover for the rear. One of the main reasons I picked the ISRs, besides the price, was they actually come with the dampening extensions for the rear. So they just fit up over the little twisty knob or whatever, and then they're going to go up through the rear strut tower, and then you'll be able to adjust from inside. If you don't have these, you'll have to pull out the coilover anytime you want to adjust the dampening on your 350Z. BC Racing has these as well, and the BCs are about $400 more. You know, snapshot in time, it's October 2020. I think I paid about $750 for these. Not a huge deal, but you also get 2 spanner wrenches with the kit, obviously, so that you can tighten and loosen your lock washers or your lock nuts here. So that's pretty cool. Again, on the rears, I'm not gonna mess with the setting that ISR has for the springs right now. If I find it to be completely uncomfortable or ridiculous when I put it in the car, I'll mess with it, but I'm gonna leave those as is. So same thing here. Lefty loosey is going to raise the car, righty tighty is going to lower the car, and then of course 32-way dampening. The front springs have a 14K spring rate, I think, and the rear have 12K. That's just coming straight off the website. I don't know what that means or what it does. I apologize. But 14K in the front, 12K in the rear. And I think that pretty much, you know, covers the coilovers. It's time to get these things installed. Okay, first thing we got to do on install is remove the 8 14mm bolts that are holding the strut tower brace in. Wow. You can really dance, huh? The strut tower brace has a couple wires connected to the base, basically. You've got these little connectors over here holding, I think it's this loom here, so just stick a little flathead screwdriver in there and push down on that little tab that you see right there, and that'll pop out. And then over here on the driver's side, you got these little guys right here that go into these holes, so just push on the the top parts of them and then pull back and they'll pop right out. You can take off your strut tower brace. Okay, next you want to get your wheel off. I apologize in advance for the lighting, but I'm doing this at night, so you might see some shadows and stuff. But the next thing you want to do is remove these sensors off the stock strut. You just kind of pull out on them. Okay, next you've got this brake line connected to the front strut, so that's a 12mm bolt. Then you've got a 17mm nut and bolt holding in the strut fork. Next you'll want to undo the 17mm sway bar end link. It was at this point in the story things started going terribly, terribly wrong. These 14 mils were on so tight, and you could get at this one with a socket, but this one with the stock coilover, it was impossible to get a socket on it, so I had to use an open end, and I started to round that out. So word of the wise, just undo the knuckle here. So this is an 18mm bolt with a little cotter pin. You know, get a new cotter pin if you're watching this ahead of time. I put the old one back in, but that's 18 mils. So undo that. That pops, straight down. There's a washer up here, so don't lose it. And then you've got good flexibility in here to maneuver things around. You can get the strut out, but the story doesn't end there. My stock strut was actually blown. So regardless of how many things I took apart, the bottom of the strut was pushing on the, I don't even know what arm it is, but it's the arm that it connects to. So I ended up cutting this ear off first and trying to hammer it out. Still too much pressure on it. So then I just cut it right down the middle and it finally popped out. But in no way is that the right way to do things. That's just what I had to do to get it out. Since it was blown, I didn't care that I was going to absolutely massacre it. So that's where the plot got a little thicker. Now, as you can see, I do have the new coilover in, and I apologize for missing that part on video. I was just so frustrated with how everything was going. I wanted to make sure I got it in without any issues, and I actually did the passenger side first, so I would look like I knew what I was doing on this side, but when everything started going wrong, I just kind of put the camera down and wanted to make sure I got it in. But anyways, I put the coilover in on basically its smallest setting just so that it would fit. But then when I realized it was going to be way too small at its smallest setting, I started cranking or loosening the bottom of this. So when I put it in with the ISR facing out, just like you see it here, and then I started cranking it to the left or loosening it, and I cranked it out 17 times. There's about 5 inches exactly between this lower locking ring that locks in the bottom portion of the coilover and this first lock ring that locks in the tension on the spring. Obviously, to get the stock strut or coilover out, you do have to remove the 3 12mm bolts here, but just FYI, if you're going to be doing this install, I didn't want to miss that part. Obviously, I reconnected my 17mm bolt with the nut, 17mm nut on the other side, and also my sway bar end link. Now we have to bring this little ring down that's going to hold all the sensors and brake lines. One thing I did notice, the way this came, these were actually bent a little crooked. It looked like on purpose, but I just took a pliers and bent them straight. Once you find the right spot for those, you can crank down the lock ring that holds them in place. And then you can reattach your brake line with the 12mm nut. Pop your sensors back on. Okay, I just popped the wheel back on, so let's check that front ride height. Barely got the jack out. Little fender gap. It'll probably settle a little bit, but I think I'm good with that. Let's move on to the back. Pop the wheel off first. Okay, first things first, I'm gonna put a jack underneath the spring bucket. Okay, next there is a 17mm bolt with a nut. Also 17 mils right here that will take off. And once you got that, you can let the jack down. Pop the spring out. Okay, then we'll take the strut bolt out. That's a 17 mil. Okay, next you've got two 12mm nuts at the top of the shock there. We'll drop the shock out. Okay, next on the rear strut bar, we got to remove these plastic end caps. Okay, now this is where our dampener extensions come into play. So the head of them is held on by this little Allen screw the kit comes with. This hole on the far left, right here, is the one we'll be going through. And I am gonna actually widen that hole out a little bit, otherwise it fits through there, but there's gonna be a little bit of side to side putting the coilover in, and then also on adjustments I just want to make sure there's room and not having the metal kind of scrape into that. So I'm just going to use one of these things. I got it at Harbor Freight, but I'm just going to hog that hole out a little bit more. And actually I think this is going to work out perfect because the bottom of that plastic piece has this little plug, and this plug is what normally goes into there. So that will actually be our pilot hole. This is a 5/16 inch bit, I believe. I bumped it up to a 3/8 inch drill bit. Okay, with that opened up, I think we're ready to put the coilover in with the dampener on it. The rear coilovers do come with new locking nuts. So that's kind of nice. I don't think I mentioned that at the beginning. Okay, then we'll drop the dampener extension onto the top and tighten it down. Alright, let's see if I can get this coilover in and that dampening extension through by myself. Got it. 12mm nuts. Okay, here's that extension up top. I scuffed it up a little bit, but that's no big deal. It'll be covered up, so we'll just put the top on it. Let's test it out here. Yep, I can hear it clicking. Obviously we'll need to cut this down, but I don't have the tool to do it, so we'll have to do that in the morning. It's pretty sweet. If I missed it, don't forget to tighten your 12mm nuts up here. Okay, now if we wanted to, we could stop here, connect the new coilover and reconnect the old bucket, and that would be the install of the coilover. But we're gonna replace these buckets with the adjustable toe arms, and then also the camber arms right down here. Okay, so the bucket is held in by a 19mm bolt, which I have that open end wrench on, and a 17mm nut up front. So let me get those off. Okay, then just behind that you've got the factory camber arm. Same thing there. You got a 17mm nut, 19mm bolt there, and one more set right there. The camber arm closest to the brakes is a 17mm bolt and nut. Okay, real hot tip on the driver's side camber arm. Getting the bolt out is really hard because the rear sway bar is there. You can kind of see it sitting right up in here, but if you disconnect the end closest to the brakes, you can kind of angle it up, get that bolt out. So here's proof that you can get it out without taking the sway bar out. It would be easier to take the sway bar out, so I just didn't feel like doing it, but you can get that bolt out. So okay, here's where our other goodies come into play. So we're gonna need a toe arm and a camber arm for this side, and then we're gonna need two of these eccentric lockout bolts. Side note, you could probably make your own eccentric bolt lockout kit, delete or whatever, with about $10 worth of Ace Hardware bolts. But if you buy the ISR ones, you get gold bolts, and they look sick. Okay, so unfortunately I'm gonna have most of this off camera, but the bolt got it started with a washer on one side. Now I gotta stick the camber arm up in there and get that bolt through, and I'll come back to you. Okay, magically I got that bolt through, put another washer on the other side, then I just gotta tighten that down. Then I gotta get the old factory bolt and nut through this side. And just so you guys know, I'm totally guessing on lengths right now. With the camber arm, that'll have to be adjusted later with a alignment. Okay, and next we'll tighten down the eccentric lockout kit or bolt. Just make sure the washer is inside of those little walls where the old eccentric bolt used to be able to rotate. I am going to torque these to 80 foot-pounds. Okay, now we'll take another eccentric bolt and washer and get our toe arm. Another washer here. Okay, we'll put our toe arm bolt in next with the nut on the other side. These are 17 mil, and this bolt is uniquely sized compared to the camber arm bolt. This bolt's a little longer, so don't mess those two up. And this is the right way. They go opposite way. Torque this one to 80 foot-pounds as well. Okay, then we're just putting the old bolt through the coilover fork and using the ISR supplied lock nut. The ISR lock nut is a 19 mil and the stock bolt is 17, so that'll be different going forward. Okay, this side's all done. I'll go knock out the other side and then we'll see how it looks on the ground. Now we're down to 3 fingers. We'll finish it tomorrow. The next day. Okay, I think you just push up on the black and down on the metal, and that kind of pulls that up. Just snip it right down here. Okay, well, if you do this, get a sharper set of snips than I have. But once you snip it, just push the rubber down and expose a little piece and then screw the top back on. Before I forget, don't forget to put your strut tower brace back on with the 14mm bolts and nuts. I'm going to leave mine off for the time being because my engine needs a deep clean, and then I'll put it back on. The fronts are actually still looking pretty good. The rears are still riding way too high. So right now we've got about 2.5 inches between the bottom locking ring and the top one. So let's take an inch out and see what that looks like. Good gosh, look at that thing. I hope you guys enjoyed that install video. I hope you found it useful, whether you're doing ISR coilovers or some other brand. I think it's pretty much interchangeable. You could follow those same steps. Wanted to give you my first impressions quick. I've only been driving the car for about half of a day, so you really can't judge too much on that. Up front, I have the dampeners set all the way to their stiffest setting or their hardest setting. In the back, I have them set to their softest setting. Logically, in my brain, up front is where you get your handling. So the stiffer the suspension, the better the handling. Out back is where you need your grip. The softer the coilover, the better the grip. So that's my theory on that. I'm going to try it for a little bit. I'll definitely be tweaking it, I'm sure, but that's what I'm going to start with for now. I have ripped it up and down the streets a little bit. This thing is absolutely planted, so I'm digging that. It's too early for me to give you guys a full, review of the coilover. So if you want to see that, go ahead and just leave a comment below. I'm more than happy to do it. I just don't want this video to get too long, which it already is. Now, I wanted to give you guys my exact settings in case you like the way my car is looking right now and you do the ISR coilovers. Up front, what I did was I bottomed out the coilovers to what would be their smallest position or their lowest position, and then I turned them 17 times. I just went with the ISR, and one time around where the ISR showed up again was one time. I did that 17 times. That was the setting for the front coilovers, and then for the rear coilovers, from the bottom lock ring to the top lock ring that holds The bigger lock ring in place, I have an 1 3/8 space in between there, and right now it is looking about right. There is about 1 finger of gap on the rear tire, and just a little less than that on the front. So we'll see if it settles. If it settles and gets lower than that. I don't want to go any lower than this. One of the main reasons I don't want to go any lower than this is I took the car to the car wash already, and I had anxiety about getting it in the wash, and then as I was exiting, it kind of got hung up, and there was a car coming behind me, and I kind of had to gas it out of there. So, that's part of the running your car a little bit lower issues. You're gonna run into, speed bumps are gonna scrape your exhaust. Getting in and out of car wash is gonna be a pain. So, don't lower your car unless you got a good reason to. I didn't really have that great of a reason to. I just wanted to get rid of that fender gap that everybody was talking about. Now going forward, I'm gonna have to get an alignment on the car. Obviously I don't have the camber and the toe settings set perfectly right now. I just kind of threw them in there, tightened them down, and I'll need to talk to probably, someone who knows a little bit more about that than me to get the right settings there. And then I'll need, before I get a full-blown alignment, I want to do something with the angle on the front. If I'm gonna mess with that, I'm gonna have to get an alignment anyway, so I might as well do an angle mod now, then take the car in for an alignment. With all of that said, I think that will do it for today's video, guys. I appreciate you so much for watching. Stay tuned for more. I'll catch you in the next one.